The Outcast, a podcast sponsored by Muncie Outreach. Our regular host, Jordan, is taking a small break, so today I will be your host. I'm Rose, my pronouns are she, her, and I am agnostic, though the religious background that I do have, as though it is little, is Catholic.
Hello, my name is Wesley. My pronouns are they, them, and he, him. My background is Methodist.
Hey, my name's Leo. I use he, him, and I went to church like once or twice. I was technically baptized. I have no memory of it, and I couldn't tell you what church it was if I tried. So I would say, like, I'm 1/4 Christian and 100% agnostic.
Also joining us today in our discussion is a wonderful guest, Rashad.
Hi, I'm Rashad. My pronouns are he, him, or she, her. My religious background, I guess, like mildly Protestant. Like, I'm like that, like mild, like American Protestant. Like, my family goes to church sometimes, but like, I don't really practice religion like that. It's not really something I do, but I wouldn't say I'm exactly atheist either. God is just kind of there.
So then, for today's episode, we'll be discussing Lil Nas X. Lil Nas X, an artist who has been no stranger to controversy, has again taken the cultural spotlight with the release of his song and music video, Montero, Call Me By Your Name, earlier this year. In his lyrics, he is unapologetically open about his attraction as a gay man, and in his video, utilizes religious imagery and overt sexuality to make a point about the oppression that queer people face. In his open expression of his sexuality and in him using religious symbols and themes to tell his story, he has received backlash and sparked outrage among certain people, with many denouncing him as worshiping Satan and/or that his video is part of an evil agenda. In looking at Lil Nas X, Montero, and the controversy surrounding it, is Lil Nas X really as evil or satanic as some claim him to be? And what does the situation go to say about the experiences of queer people, especially queer people of color, in modern culture and in the music industry? We'll be discussing these topics and more in today's episode. So starting off the discussion, how did you all first come across the Lil Nas X Montero music video, and what were your initial reactions to it?
So I remember seeing it when I was on Twitter, like on the cause like my Twitter auto plays videos, and I was like, what is this? And then I looked, and then I saw cause sometimes people take like clips of music videos from YouTube and then they post them on Twitter to like get a viral tweet, and that's kind of what happened, especially because that video is like so controversial. So it's like that's a really easy music video to get a viral tweet off of.
Yeah, you had like so many people posting stuff about it. In fact, like the first like interactions I had like with it were people making posts about it on Tumblr. And like it took me a while to like, well, not like a whole long while or anything to watch it. But before I watched it, it would come up before my YouTube videos. But I usually was like listening to like music. And I just thought, oh, it's another advertisement. Because, you know, he has that little blurb where he talks at the beginning. So I would skip it. And then I finally got to watching it and I was just like, oh my God, wait, that was this. Oh, and like I watched it and I mean, I loved it. I thought it was great. Because I'm agnostic and not really religious, a lot of like the imagery in that sort of went over my head, but it was definitely like really cool to see him be so brazen and be so creative with his video.
I was really excited when I first saw it, and I first saw a post about it. When I think the first image I saw was of him as Eve, leaning against supposedly the tree of knowledge in the Garden of Eden, and with this just like luscious hair, luscious skin, right? Very, very cool. And this year I had read recently Paradise Lost and Dante's Inferno. So there was this was very interesting. It was just a continuation of all of that centuries old imagery, centuries old stories, into what we care about and think about today. And so to me, it seemed really, really intense and very smart, and a really interesting path for him to go down. I was really excited.
I also kind of I liked the imagery of it, and it kind of relates to what you were saying, Wesley. My first like exposure to it, honestly, wasn't the song itself. I watch a YouTuber who does these, he calls them clip breakdowns, and he'll basically take a piece of media and dissect the cinematography of it piece by piece. And in this case, often they're more mocking, and he does like less like Lifetime original movies or that kind of thing. But this was like one of the rare positive ones. And so one thing that I think was helpful for me is that before I even heard the song, I already knew like the deeper meanings, because I kind of had like my first exposure was a step-by-step breakdown of the imagery and symbolism. And so like before I even listened to it, I was like, okay, so I mean, yeah, I definitely heard like the sexual nature of the lyrics, but I only saw it in terms of the video and the more personal side of it, and the dealing with internalized homophobia and external homophobia. Like that's what I was reading from a lot. And then I watched the video, and I was like, wow, there's my own like personal wet dream, just like right on a right filmed for video. I mean, I'm a repressed gay little monster fucker, so it was just like the devil and like a giant snake. Sign me the fuck up. But it's also deep, so just win-win.
Yeah. So then, building off of the topic of the imagery used in the video, what were some that really stood out to you as you were watching, and what points was Lil Nas X trying to get across while using that imagery? I know for me, like I said, the imagery went over my head a lot when I watched it. When I did some like preliminary research to like get more information on it, and one of the things that I really, really loved was how, he has that section with the stoning, and that like is supposed to, from what I can tell, be a like making a point about the persecution of gay people in modern society, and moving into going down into hell and giving Satan a lap dance. I believe, I can't remember which website I read this on, but I'm pretty sure in an interview he like talked about it, or it might have been one of his executive producers, but they mentioned that the whole point of that was being gay. In his experiences, he's been like told that he's going to hell, and that there's no way being his authentic self as a gay Black man, there's no way that he cannot go to hell. So if he is going to go to hell, he's going to embrace it and embrace himself and use those things told like that are usually used in a way to try and hurt him to instead empower himself. Like that was amazing to me, and it makes me appreciate the video and all of the work he put into it like so much more. Like it's amazing.
I sort of got a bit of a campy vibe, because like the title of the song being like Call Me By Your Name, which is like a queer romance film. Because I remember hearing like clips of the song, and I was like, oh, the song is called Call Me By Your Name. Like that's literally like a queer film. So it like, even the song title within itself was like a campy like gay joke already.
Yeah.
And then like him cosplaying as Eve, and then like sitting up against a tree, and there's this like big vast field, and he's like up against the tree of knowledge, and then he's like giving like Satan a lap dance, and like he's like swinging down the pole, and he's like literally like going to hell. Like I saw it as like this celebration of like camp, and like the queerness of camp, because like with camp there's this level of like this like effort put in, but like almost like failure, and that's like sort of the beauty of camp. And so like I saw like I got that like vibe like from the imagery. Like so there was like the serious element about the persecution of like queer people, but there was also like this like joke as well, and like this fun aspect to it, I guess, sort of a drag vibe, I guess, or even a ballroom vibe, because that was very prolific in the Black gay community. I mean, even today. So
I did notice like a lot of the word you use, camp, I think is really good for that, like camp and kitsch, and the idea of like this kind of hyper performance and almost like one thing, and like this is kind of the imagery that stuck out to me, is that I think throughout the video there's a lot of like aggressively embracing the ideas that people have about you and reclaiming them in a way, in the sense of using that camp to kind of play up these dramatic aspects and have fun with it and make it enjoyable. And that's like, we see that in the outfits that the various characters wear, kind of like, yeah, human like drag and ball culture. And then but I feel like camp and drag have like a lot of Venn diagram overlap, especially the farther back you go. But like, I also think that a lot of the religious aspect of it plays into that a lot as well, in the sense of it by Eve tasting the fruit of knowledge, and also like being seduced by the snake, Satan, it is becoming something else, and it is becoming almost greater than oneself. And then I also think that in terms of the lap dance at the end, and like originally the character that Lil Nas X is in the video is going to go up to heaven, but instead he makes a conscious effort to instead choose to go down. And I think that to me is just kind of says something about this idea of like, you know what? I'm treated like a devil. I'm treated like I'm going to hell. I'm treated like a sin and all of these things. And you know what? I'm going to be the best fucking baddest bitch at being those things that you can ever imagine. I'm not just going to hell. I'm going to go to hell, and I'm going to have sex with the devil. He is going to eat me out, and I will become the new king of hell. I'm going to win at going to hell. If I'm going to go, I'm going to go down swinging on the pole, and I will be the best at it. Deal with it. And I think that that's kind of, like, I guess if I had to say, like, what's the message of the song, like, that's the message of the imagery, but also in the song itself, he's kind of saying, like, I'm having gay sex, deal with it. That's kind of what he's doing in a grander scale in our culture and society, and to his fans and to the industry and the music world. So yeah. I think all that's very interesting.
Yeah, 100%. Also adding on to the scene at the beginning with the Garden of Eden and everything like that, and with the snake, on the tree at one point there's an inscription that references a philosophical text by Plato that sort of talks about like the quote unquote origin story of mankind, in humans originally being two bodies stuck together, some being a man and a man, some being a woman, and some man and woman, like being separated and then longing for each other's half, like talking about attraction. So in referencing that, it's not only referencing one of the like earliest examples of the addressing of LGBT identities and like not just straight attraction and identities, but also with the fact that the snake was like with his face, like it was sort of like a representation of himself. You could also like see this idea of, I don't need somebody else to like be a whole person. And that's a really empowering thing to see as well.
I'll just add on to a couple of things real quick. That's really interesting, and I did not know what that text was, so thank you for mentioning that. I think, and what you were saying, Leo, about he's happy to go to hell, he's going to win at going to hell, I think is exactly what he said in tweets and interviews, and that's a really interesting argument, and I've just loved seeing Christians, be so squirmy about that, and because they don't like that, that's defeating their tool to oppress gay people, to get gay people to come to church and repent. That's making that tool useless, is by saying, I'm not afraid of it. And I'll say a little bit more about camp too. There is so much camp in this video. The fact that he's stoned, not with stones, but with butt plugs, right? And later on, I think we've seen like in media plenty of like sexy versions of Satan. Satan is maybe a man with a stubble and a suit with red eyes or something. But this is not that. This is a very camp looking Satan. This is like literally cartoon, red skin, a massive horn Satan. It's not very cool. And the reason that's not cool, it's cool in a way, but I think it's overdone and it's camp. And a few things that the writer and philosopher and filmmaker Susan Sontag said about camp in her famous notes on camp were things like, more is more when it comes to camp. It is extremity. It's extremity in being artificial instead of natural. I think all of Lil Nas's videos, even before this, have had this gloss to it. Like they look like they're made by robots, or everything is like very CGI. I think that's camp in itself. Like we said, Satan and the butt plugs. It's also feminine men and masculine women. That's another key aspect of camp, and he is certainly doing that, portraying himself as Eve and things like that. And so this video has camp in all of its aspects, I think. And the way it uses camp, like you were saying, Leo, is to take away the power of this very ridiculous and camp in itself vision of what hell is and of what punishment should be for gay people, is to say, look at what you're describing to me. It's ridiculous. It's a cartoon. It is really bright colors, and it's a very simple, and it should have no power over me. Look at me dance all over it. And I think that's really amazing.
No, yeah, 100%. That's just so amazing. And then building off of what you were talking about earlier with some Christians getting upset, and I mean, no doubt, I mean, like you said, like him as a Black gay man using tools that have been like used to like hurt him and instead using them to empower himself. So like building off of that, there are probably like other reasons for people being upset. So then like, why are conservatives and conservative like Christians being like so up in arms about this video? And what does the outrage say about how queer artists are perceived in mainstream media?
I think a lot of things, but I think it's mainly because like it's showing that the world really is like changing, because like you guys said, like hell was the last resort, and like it used to work. It was working for a while, and now it's just not. And so now they have to sort of deal with the fact that like the rest of the world is just does not align with the way that they feel, because there are a certain subset of Christians who believe that the world should be run the way they want it to run. And now we're in a world where everyone kind of just does what they want. And that's upsetting for a lot of people. But I also think there is a certain subset of Black Christians specifically that sort of theorize all the time about how like the music industry is evil and how there's like the Illuminati, like there was a lot of theories about Beyonce joining the Illuminati. Like she even says in Formation, like y'all haters corny with that Illuminati mess, because they were saying that she was a member of the Illuminati. And so I think honestly, some of the hell imagery is probably like Lil Nas X like poking that bear, because Black people still feel that way about the music industry. So Lil Nas X being a Black gay man, he's probably like screwing with them with that too, because like he's not even making it like, he's not even being subtle about it. So now he's like really like prodding them and like trying to like bother them now, because he's like putting it right in front of their faces. And so that like really annoys them, because now it's like, oh, now I was right. They are satanic. He is Satan. He is literally Satan personified. Like he's taken on the persona of like a demonic figure, because like that certain subset of like Black Protestants think of celebrities in general as just like demonic beings. Like becoming a celebrity is like entering a certain kind of hell. And so Lil Nas X is like taking on that and being like, yeah, it is. And I'm a demon and it's great.
The videos that he posted of preachers and other people reacting to his video, especially not even the song, just his video, and really, I would say, revealing these weirdos are in their hearts, which is bigots and hateful people and ignorant people. That I would say, like you're saying, Rashad, that's kind of part of it, is that he's baiting them. He's saying, he's luring them to show who they are, to show themselves and show how ridiculous they are. Why is this the thing they care about? There's so many issues in the world, and the Bible doesn't even address this, or doesn't say that this is wrong, isn't asking you to be wary of celebrities. So absolutely,
I also see the video as like, I also see the video as sort of being like him is like another formal like coming out for him, because like when he first came out, they like would like place girls around him and stuff, and like they tried to like make him like a straight figure. Like they were really trying to push that he was straight. And for a while he was like, he had the really big song, so he was like being accepted by pretty much everyone. And then he ended up coming out, and then everyone's like, oh, like even people that were homophobic liked his song. Like that's how like transparent he was about his sexual orientation. And so now that he has like all of this power and influence, it's like, actually, I'm the thing you hate. Like, actually, I'm gay.
I remember what I was going to say. It was very similar to the point Wesley made, actually, about how with Lil Nas X, both in his lyrics and in his music video, and also in his response to people being critical of the content he put out, and with the whole Satan shoes thing, he purposely is making these, like, he's purposely taking these actions both to rile these people up, but also to make a point about, well, like Wesley said, sort of to call them out on like bullshit and stuff like that, and really just point out how ridiculous a lot of the criticisms are, but then also to make a point how in the face of those criticisms, it's not going to stop gay people like across the board from like being able to accept themselves. And just with publishing, or not publishing, just with releasing this like song, and just with releasing this album and this video, he makes a point through doing that he can be successful and be whole and like be strong despite what everybody says about him being a Black gay guy and being an artist. And I think he actually like specifically mentioned that in regards to his like lyric, "A Sign of the Times," every time that I speak, is that by doing the stuff that he does, it's a sign of times, both in how there's still negative aspects, but also how queer people are gaining a lot of power in media, despite everything. And that's really cool.
Yeah, two things on that is, well, and like just kind of addressing, like responding to a couple of different things that we've talked about. I think that, honestly, I think that a lot of the pushback isn't about like, I don't know if these people genuinely believe, and I get that arguing in bad faith is something that's really hard to prove, but I have to wonder how many of these people genuinely believe that there's satanic influence, and how many people just want to hold on to their power as a Christian majority leader. And I think that we've seen that in just kind of the modern culture war. And people like, and not just like religion specifically, but conservatives as a whole. And the modern conservative is all about scaring the other conservatives about, oh, well, man, these people want to get rid of Mr. Potato Head and make them gender neutral, and look at insert straw man argument that never happens here, and oh, look at this example of this happening when it didn't, or was out of context, or just a lie. And it's like, they're doing that, and I don't think it's because they genuinely believe it. I think it's because it supports corporate interests in order for them to maintain their power, and so they're going to get paid if they can maintain their political seats. And so there's like a Republican senator who's getting massive payouts from big oil says that climate change isn't real. It's not because I don't think that it's because they don't believe climate change. I believe that they don't believe that it will affect them in their lifetime, but getting that money from the oil company will. And I feel like that just kind of applies to this Lil Nas X thing in a way, because I think that I think the majority of people don't genuinely believe that it's like there was satanic panic, and I do think that it's not a zero amount of people who believe it, but I think the people who genuinely believe in like that he is trying to indoctrinate children into Satanism is small. But I think that a preacher who makes a big speech about how children are being led into Satanism brings a lot of really scared older people, who are the people who are more likely going to church, to feel like the world is against them and to fear, and that fear makes them more powerful. And so I guess, again, it's hard for me to prove bad faith in this, but I feel like it's a loud minority of people who believe that this is like genuinely a bad thing. And I think that the problem is that the majority of people are probably neutral on it, and we don't are probably neutral on it, but they don't speak up. And the people who are a minority and do care negatively and will enforce it.
Yeah, definitely. It's also a lot of the people in that small minority have large platforms, or they have a lot of privilege. Like a lot of them are like cishet white people and are able to have the resources necessary to get their voice out there and to like be heard, unfortunately, because that's just how the status quo is like realized.
There's also a market for that sort of thing, like because like liberalism has come such a long way, like conservatism has had to become like has sort of had to take on a new role, and so now they're the ones reacting to the culture. They're not the culture anymore, so they're the ones that are reacting to it. So now you've seen a lot of like neoconservatives, like there's this new market, and it's literally just like guy girl screams at camera about the libs for an hour, and they're making like hundreds of thousands of dollars a year, because people a lot of people are really upset at how far liberalism has come, and so there's a big market for that, which is why a lot of people were expressing outrage about Lil Nas X video, because a lot of people will watch a video with bigoted opinions because like a lot of us feel inclined to like shoot that down. So we'll give it a lot of attention so we can like say this is wrong. And a lot of people will capitalize off of that, which sort of breeds a sort of like outrage culture.
Yeah.
I guess, where we're constantly arguing and having all of these discussions about all of these different issues, and there's always a way to capitalize it. There's always a way to capitalize on people's feelings.
Yeah. So then, having addressed the religious imagery in the video, he does use some sexual imagery, and a few of his lyrics are like overtly sexual. And the response to that often has been condemning him, or like saying, oh, you shouldn't be sexual either because you're a gay man, or like you'll be hurtful to the children or whatever. So then like that also brings up the fact that in like rap and hip hop and those genres, straight artists often talk often and very intimately about having sex and about things like that. So then it brings up the question, why can straight artists be as vulgar as they want in songs, but then queer artists have to confine themselves to a clean, non-threatening image?
Because of the way and I'm sure you guys already know this, but because of the way in which queerness is viewed, like queerness is often viewed very sexually, like especially like lesbianism, like here, like listen to a straight girl talk about lesbians, like she'll be like, yeah, like I could never like eat like I could never like perform cunnilingus like on a girl or whatever. And it's like, is that what you think like lesbian? You just think it's that? Or like a straight guy talking about gay sex, it's like, I can never like fuck a guy in the ass. And it's like, is that all you think gay people do? Like, do you think they just like do anal all day? Like, you don't think that they like go out to eat or go to theme parks, or you think they just have anal sex all day? Like, is that what you think they do?
Yeah.
So
like,
I think
sorry.
It's just like on a larger scale, like we're just viewed as, it's like there's sort of a adultification of queerness, I guess. So like, and you notice this, like if you came out young, because like I came out young, and a lot of times people are like, well, you need time to like figure out if you're actually that, if you're actually gay, or if you're actually trans, or if you're actually a lesbian, if you're actually this, because like that's like an adult thing. And it's like, it really doesn't have to be though, and it really doesn't have to be a sexual thing either, but that's just kind of the way in which like queerness is viewed. And also it's just like rap is such a boys club, so it's like the straight men can like, they can talk about sex however they want to. The women can talk about sex, but they can only talk about sex in the context of, look at me, I'm sexy, I sleep around, that sort of thing. They have to talk about it in like a stripper kind of way. I don't hate it, but that's the only way in which women can talk about like sex in rap music. But like gay men, no, just don't do it at all. Just don't do it at all. Like no, because it's like, this is the boys club, and this is a specific kind of boys club. Like you're lucky you're here at all. Like it's like, don't push it. Like that's the attitude that people have, especially now towards like Lil Nas X. But even before Lil Nas X, like when people like, I remember like when Cakes to Killa like came out, and like people were like, yeah, like you need to, like, you're a good rapper, but don't push it. Like, don't push yourself onto me. Like, don't push your identity onto me, sort of thing.
Yeah, this actually reminds me about something that I saw while doing my preliminary research, both like in regards to Montero, but also in response to when he came out not long after doing Old Town Road. You had like some people who were acting like him being gay and being Black was trying to take away masculinity from Black men. And definitely, I think that's one of the reasons why gay men are so often alienated within rap and stuff, especially in regards to like sex. One, because a lot of like toxic masculinity ties being a man into having attraction to women. So that's already gone. But then with so many songs talking intimately about having sex and about part of masculinity, like having like this sort of power dynamic in sex often, which is sort of misogyny.
It's like when you listen to rap, like when I listen to rap music, it's always like lists of things. So like cars and certain like lifestyle identifiers. Country is kind of the same way, but like rap is special in the sense that women get thrown in there. It's like cars, women, they say bitches, but cars, women, certain fashion brands, whatever. But like women specifically are always thrown in there. Like women are also sort of seen as like a lifestyle identifier. Like if you are surrounded by women, that is sort of like a microcosm of how much of a man you are and like how cool you are. Like I'm surrounded by.
Yeah. So then with Lil Nas X and other like gay artists in those kind of industries, you'll get people attacking them for not being masculine enough, both in regards like to gender expression and freedom of how they express themselves.
It's a certain like fear that Black straight men have of like because this happens a lot because it happens every single time. Like it happened with Young Thug. It happened with Jaden Smith when he did the Louis Vuitton ad when he wore the skirt. It happened with Zaya, Dwayne Wade's daughter. She's trans. It happened when Kid Cudi wore the dress to pay tribute to Kurt Cobain on, was it SNL? It happens every time a Black man dresses in a gender non-conforming context, or if a Black AMAP person comes out as like not cis, it's always like they're trying to feminize the Black male. It's like it's always seen as like something coming from the powers that be and not like personal choice. It's like Kid Cudi didn't wear a dress because Kid Cudi wanted to wear a dress. Kid Cudi wore a dress because the white man is making him wear a dress, because that's what you have to do when you become famous. You have to wear a dress when you become famous. Like it sort of draws back to Black people, like some Black people thinking like, oh, you know, the industry is evil and they're all, and I mean, they're not exactly wrong about the industry being evil, but I think they take away like agency and personal choice a lot of times when they see like Black men dressing within a gender non-conforming context, or like they're trying to feminize the Black male. Like maybe the Black male is trying to feminize himself. Did you ever think about that? But it's like a call back to like slavery. Like they're very afraid of being demasculinized because it feels like oppression. So when they see a Black man being feminine and like celebrating their femininity, it feels like watching them be oppressed, and it just enrages them. And it's like being feminine and being demasculinized via chattel slavery are two different things. Like me putting on a dress and me being in chattel slavery are two very different things, but it's like their brain, it can't compute that for some odd reason, which is why like that video was like prime for that kind of outrage, because it was going to elicit that exact kind of reaction.
Yeah, that definitely like brings up a point. A lot of times when you have artists or just anyone like starting to push boundaries, you'll have people who start to get really outraged by it. And a lot of times it's because they see people expressing themselves and like pushing those boundaries as like, instead of like seeing it as a good thing in the fact that they're pushing boundaries, they see it as a threat because it threatens like the previously established status quo of how things are. So like in that instance, for example, like when you have these Black men who find like power for themselves in these already existing structures, when they have people who threaten them, their instinct is to be scared and to act on that. And yeah, it's interesting to see that happen here.
I'd just like to mention really quickly, this is an excellent series of points. And just to enforce it, there's a book that I really found a lot of insights in called Amateur, A True Story About What Makes a Man. And this is by a trans man named Thomas Page McBee. And in one moment, he compares the United States and another country, which I think is in Latin America. But the main points about the United States, he says, there was a study about and they asked people in this other country, what defines a man, or what is a man? And they said, a man is not a boy. And they asked people in the United States, and they said, what is a man? And they said, a man is not a woman. And so it's a really, it's a striking thing, and it pervades our society. And this video taps into that.
Something I just kind of wanted to note on is, first of all, I know that this is like kind of one of those words that gets tossed around, but I think it's impossible not to bring up the idea of respectability politics when we're getting into this, and the idea of like, it's kind of, I think that a lot of the majority of homophobes have transitioned not of I hate gay people, because they know that they're not allowed to say that socially. So what they say is, love is love, just do it in your own bedroom. Keep it to yourself. It's okay to be gay. I'm not going to actively hate crime you, but don't let me see it or it will piss me off. And I think that that's kind of what's showing up with Lil Nas X a lot, is the more visibly, openly gay he acts, the more that pushback happens. And it's kind of the idea of like people only want the nice, quiet gay person who acts like a normal person and doesn't make being gay their whole personality, and blah, blah, blah. First of all, my personality is being gay. I never got a nicer one. This is all I got. It's all that takes up my waking thoughts. God, I wish that, like, being gay was like how these hyper-conservatives think that it is. It's They always act like it's like, oh, gay people are running the world now and everyone is super cool being gay. God damn, bitch, I wish. Homophobes are being silenced. I wish it worked. Shut the fuck up.
Go off. Yeah.
But it just, I think it's the idea of he's being more open about it, and they don't like that. It's okay, you can be gay if you're making another Old Town Road and not talking about it.
I think it's also because he's specifically placing himself within hip hop. Like, if he wasn't specifically placing himself within hip hop, there wouldn't be, especially not as much of a negative reaction from Black people. But the fact that he's like introducing himself within the culture of hip hop and trying to put himself like in that space, coming in there as a gay man and saying, I am a gay man, and then making a music video like this will forever be a hip hop music video. And that is upsetting for a lot of people, because the idea of a gay rapper used to be a distant thing. You know, like Wendy Williams had this thing about like searching for the gay rapper. And like I remember watching so many YouTube videos about, do you think there could ever be a gay rapper? And everyone was talking about it like it was this distant future, like it was this impossible thing. And now it's here, and now we have it, and everyone is upset about it because we never wanted it. We just always talked about it because it was an interesting thing. But we've had people try to come in. You know, we've had our Cake Tequilas and who was the guy that sang the Throw That Boy Pussy?
Why Young Red, Throw That Boy Pussy.
They were upset about that. That made them so upset.
That song fucks.
No, literally,
it's a bop. It's just hard because like I'll try to show, like, I'm like, no, you know, guys, it's like, it's a political statement, you know, it's talking about reclaiming, it's reclaiming one's sexuality and being proud of it. And it's like, Leo, I've been looking at guys twerking for the past like 5 minutes. I don't know where like the social justice is in this one.
I think it's such a social justice statement. The fact that he took the instrumental of Wowzers by Lil Wayne, a song where Lil Wayne's talking about eating pussy, and then he like has the most gay lyrics on top of the Wowzers instrumental, which is like a song that so many straight men listen to. So they're hearing like, oh, this is the Wowzers beat. And then you hear him and he's like, throw that boy pussy. Oh, I think it's such a statement.
Yeah. To have like multiple Black gay musical artists like choosing to go and be their authentic selves and not like let this expectation that they should like hide themselves or censor themselves like rule them, that's like really amazing to see. And then talking about the hip hop industry specifically, with it being the #1 genre in the US now, do you feel that queer artists are starting to be accepted more, or do you still feel that there are barriers that need to be broken?
I am starting to see those barriers being broken, but I don't know if we're exactly there yet. I'm starting to see like there's a new kid. He used to be the City Girls hairdresser, Saucy Santana. He's starting to come up. I'm starting like, and it's like it's interesting because an artist like him probably wouldn't have gotten to the amount of notoriety that he's gotten to. But I'm starting to see like little bits of it, but we haven't gotten to a place yet where like we've gotten a handful. It's like we only have a few people scattered around, but it's not like a whole movement yet, I guess. Like at least not like the whole subset of people.
We're not done fighting yet. It's getting
exactly.
Like
because hip hop is still fighting it. They're still fighting it. They're like, no, please, no. They're like, please, God, no, we don't want a gay rap. Please, no.
There's an interesting there's a Netflix show that's called Rhythm and Flow that I really enjoyed, and it's a very good show, I would say it's pretty prominent. Probably it has Cardi B and Chance the Rapper as a couple of the judges on the show, and it's a competition show for rappers. It tells an interesting story though about gay rappers. The show starts out with auditions where a lot of people come in, and many of them are not included for the rest of the show. One of these includes a young man who's a gay man, and he's a rapper, and he comes to audition. And after he auditions, Cardi B, I think, asks him, "Is he gay?" He says yes, and she says, "Well, you have to be ready to be the first gay rapper. You got to be ready to be the first." It's really intense, and it speaks to what you're saying, that we're still in a time where I think barriers are being broken. I think it's also a symbol of people being unfair to gay people. That's a really intense thing. None of the straight artists had to say what they do in their bedrooms after they performed. What a vulnerable moment to be asked such a personal question. It continues that story because by the end of the show, one of the finalists is a gay woman, and she's amazing, and she's so successful, and so it feels like it's really complex, but that's the talent of queer artists is undeniable for sure. That's London B. Check her out.
Mm-hmm. Though I do agree that barriers are starting to be broken with so many artists starting to come out and express themselves more authentically. As I was doing my research, there was an article that popped up from the Gay, Lesbian, and Straight Education Network, or GLSEN, that was talking about how one of the biggest ways that homophobia comes up in hip hop and rap and those genres is through cis het artists using terminology like no homo, and a lot of times using the F slur. In regards to the no homo thing, it's just sort of for me that feels like a slap in the face, even without me being a gay man, instead being a lesbian, purposely go out of your way. Sometimes the article pointed out that artists will personally go out of their way to say something that could be taken in a gay way and then be like, oh, no homo, I'm not one of those people, and it's just shitty to see that. And then also with the F slur, especially, that's really problematic. One, because straight men have no right to reclaim that word or to use that word in the way that they do. But then for example, Eminem, though I don't really know if he'd be hip hop, but they mentioned him and how he uses the F slur, or has used it a lot. And he personally was saying oh, I use it to mean someone who's a sissy and not masculine, someone who's weak. And it's one, that plays off homophobic ideology. So that's not any better. And then two, you can't use a slur that has been used to target gay people and then decide as a straight guy what that means.
They think it's not offensive because they often use it against each other, because they have a certain worldview where they're not gay, so gay is like this like abstract thing. So it's like like if I'm calling you the F slur, then I'm like I'm like dissing your, because we have a certain level of manhood, like we have a certain level of shame. Like that's just something straight people have. They have a certain level of shame. And so I'm like shaming you. Like we don't have that, but they do. So like that's how they use it. But it's like you're still using a homophobic slur. So the people that get called that every day are gonna have a problem with it. Eminem, like, come on now. But like I am glad that at least even he is seeing now that like he probably shouldn't be saying the F slur in his songs because he shouldn't.
Yeah.
One thing specifically talking about this genre and the way that it's handled is just like we've talked about a couple of times, it's just the culture of this genre in particular is particularly like not a great environment for LGBTQ people. And that's why the fact that you brought up Eminem specifically, it kind of I thought was interesting because there's been a push for this kind of subgenre, kind of like when punk rock was a thing, there was a lot of there was a good chunk of homophobia in it. So that kind of created a subgenre called queercore, which is like punk rock and but specifically rebelling against cis het power structures. And so it was reclaiming that genre and those aesthetics, but using them as a gay person. And there's been something like that for hip hop. It's usually called homo hop, gay hop, and queer hop. And Fly Young Red and some of the ones that we've talked about are people. Angel Hayes is another one. These are artists who are like specifically Kicks to Killa, LGBT people who like specifically embrace the genre that they're in and then are aware of the culture that that specific genre functions in and then rejecting it. And queer hop, like the other one, came as a direct response to how much like just casual homophobia there was in most mainstream rappers, like Lil Wayne, Ice Cube, I think. There was just honestly a lot of them, and especially Eminem was like one of the ones where even other homophobes were like, Eminem, calm down.
And I think that's because like Eminem is like how like Lil Nas X is like a controversial figure now. Like Eminem is like in the other direction because like where Lil Nas X is like he's like breaking down barriers that queer people are facing. Like Eminem is kind of like the edgy was kind of when he was younger at least he was like the edgy boy in your math class. Like he probably has family problems at home, and so he says the F slur a lot. And he likes to make offensive jokes because he thinks like that's gonna get him friends and people are gonna like him. And he gets a kick out of like offending people and upsetting people. And also like, especially because hip hop was born out of like battle raps and like people competing with each other. Like it created this very hyper masculine, like hyper competitive space. So you have this space where men are constantly competing with each other and trying to be actively better than each other. And they're straight men at that who have societal expectations of them. And then you have Black men who not only have societal expectations of them, but have the inherited trauma of slavery. So they already have this certain aversion to queerness, whether they're gay or not. And so that breeds an environment that is not in the business of being safe for people who are actually LGBTQ, because it's just too masculine, too competitive, too trauma-filled, and just too it all coming together is just not good for that, which is why we have not seen a lot of queer rappers like that. Like all those factors together, it's just like a big, it's like a big like pot of just mess.
I think that's a very good point. And kind of like this is kind of on the topic, but just something that I want to like that bugged me especially is that Lil Nas X, while the lyrics are sexually explicit, they're not sexually explicit in the same way that I think a lot of other mainstream like rap and hip hop songs are, in the sense of the violence of it. Like a lot of the lyrics in Montero feel more like it's like, hey, yep, I'm having explicit gay sex. It's cool. Whereas I feel like often, you mentioned at one point, or someone mentioned the idea of women as property symbols in these songs, and then I think that this kind of there's a lot of parallels where women is spoken extremely violently, like it is treated as like it's not like, oh, I am having sex with a woman, it's like, oh, I'm fucking a bitch.
Yeah, it's like sex is seen as something that is done to a woman, but not necessarily with a woman. And it's also like a performance for other men, because like when those men are talking about the women they have sex with in those songs, like they're not talking to women as an audience. Like we know like boy bands, they're talking to women, like that's their market. But like rappers, they're talking to other men, they're performing for other men. They're like, look at all these women I'm having sex with. Like they're trying to impress other men, which is very interesting because they like to make fun of men who like other men. It's like you guys are kind of similar. You're kind of you kind of want to both impress men. So I don't know why you don't get along. You should.
Yeah, it's definitely interesting to see the intersection between homophobia and misogyny in the music industry.
And I'll add on to that, you know, there's a lot of depth and history when it comes to violence in rap. And I know I'm certainly not an expert on it. There's a wonderful podcast available on Spotify and other places called Louder Than a Riot. That's Louder Than a Riot. And it goes through the history of that and also an intersection with mass incarceration. And so that's another topic. It's really interesting. One episode, though, they open the episode with a study that some people conducted where they gave white volunteers sheets of lyrics that were violent, but they were lyrics written by a white country band, kind of a folk band, and it was about I shot the sheriff, how cool am I? Kind of that was the story of the lyrics, and they gave these lyrics to a lot of white volunteers. Some of the white volunteers got the words "This is a country song" above the lyrics, and others got "This is a rap song" above the lyrics. And then they asked the people after they've read the lyrics, do you think this is offensive? Do you think this is dangerous? Would you be okay with this being a song? And so when it said this is a country song, the white volunteers said, absolutely, this is okay. And then when it was a rap song, they said, no, this is terrible. This is immoral. And so I would also add to that, I would be curious to see what would happen if there were lyrics about having sex that were not clear about what the genders of the people were. And they were given to people and saying, this was written by a straight person. This was written by a gay person. Which one do they think is immoral? Which one do they think is sinful? Which one do they think is okay?
So in looking at Lil Nas X and Montero, he uses his platform to tell a story about the persecution of gay people and also one of self-acceptance, taking what has been used to hurt him and his community and instead using those things to empower himself and others. Though there have been negative responses in the controversy, including a subset of people targeting him as a Black gay man, the success of Lil Nas X and him having been able to openly express himself in Montero are a sign of the times, as LGBT individuals across the board are starting to gain more freedom in the face of harmful ideology in our modern culture. Before we end this episode, I'd like to thank Rashad for joining us in our discussion today. Really appreciate it.
Thank you for having me.
To close out, we'd all like to thank you for tuning in because it means a lot to us all here. If you need someone to talk to, look up the Trevor Project or Muncie Outreach. The suicide hotline is 800-273-8255. We all here care about you, so please take care of yourselves. See you in the next episode.